Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
And welcome back to Mom Jeans, episode number 28. We are so excited. We are back and have decided to shift our focus from ourselves to kind of a new format highlighting what's going on in the world of parenting. So we plan to bring you news articles, Reddit threads, reflect on some viral videos that we've seen. We're excited to start talking about some of these hot topics that could potentially influence our parenting styles. So we ask you to please join us by sharing your stories with us and your feedback on our Instagram page, which is at Mom Jeans the podcast. But let's get started this week. So we are your hosts. I'm Leah. I'm an IVF boy mom.
I'm Danielle. I'm a stay-at-home mom, boy mom, and a military spouse.
And I'm Lisa. I am a girl mom to 2 girls.
So this week, Lisa is bringing us an article from the New York Times. So Lisa, why don't you tell us what you've got?
Yeah, so recently the Surgeon General came out saying that raising children can be hazardous to one's health. So I thought that this was a good topic for us to discuss because I know when this came out, we talked about it in our group text and it was like, put the pause on the conversation because we want to say this in front of the camera and what our thoughts are on this. So I'm just going to kind of hit 2 little summaries here of what his article was. So a recent study by the American Psychological Association revealed that 48% of parents say most days their stress is completely overwhelming, compared with 26% of other adults who reported the same. They're navigating traditional hardships of parenting, worrying about money and safety, struggling to get enough sleep, as well as new stressors, including omnipresent screens, a youth mental health crisis, and widespread fear about the future. Stress is tougher to manage when you feel you're on your own, which is why it's particularly concerning that so many parents, single parents most of all, report feeling lonelier than other adults. Additionally, parents are stretched for time. Compared with just a few decades ago, mothers and fathers spend more time working and more time caring for their children, leaving them less time for rest, leisure, and relationships. Stress, loneliness, and exhaustion can easily affect people's mental health and well-being. And we know that the mental health of parents has a direct impact on the mental health of children. All of this is compounded by an intensifying culture of comparison, often amplified online, that promotes unrealistic expectations of what parents must do. Chasing these expectations while trying to wade through an endless stream of parenting advice has left many families feeling exhausted, burned out, and perpetually behind.
So
that's a lot.
That is a lot. But the headline is that it's hazardous. So was there any data in the article that showed that parents are dying younger than they used to be due to the results of these hazardous conditions that we're raising our children in?
Not that I read. That was not addressed in what I read, but it is known that, I mean, Dr. Lisa here, ex-golf pro, is a doctor, that stress can create heart problems and all of that kind of stuff. It didn't address that directly, though. I won't put words in his mouth, but yeah. So Danielle, what are your initial thoughts on hearing that?
Well, the title, I'm like, okay. I do get like being a parent is very stressful, but when it talks about like loneliness, and I cannot speak for a single parent, I'm sure it is, but it's just like I feel like my son brings so much more joy to my life than I ever could imagine. Like I felt those things that you were saying when it was just me and my husband. Like, we maybe you feel lonely or you feel alone or sad or depressed or stressed out, like about all sorts of things, moving, like paying bills, getting a job. And I don't know. Of course, a child adds more stress to that, but also it's like I feel like I have purpose now. Like I have a purpose, and so it's hard for me to hear when it says that it's hazardous to your health because I feel like we live in a world now like people are deciding to have like not have children and this kind of they see this and they're like, "Oh, you know what? I don't need that stress." Like so it's just kind of I felt like the article was very negative, but that's my opinion. So I don't know how y'all felt.
I felt like it was dramatic. And like
Yes.
clickbaity, right? Like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
hazardous to your health, parenting. You're gonna immediately grab the attention of younger people who may be considering having a family or not. And then they see this and it's like, holy crap, maybe not. Um, I felt like it was all of those things. And then there's like I mean, forgive me for any listeners who are new and may not know me, but there's this like woo woo conspiracy side of me that does exist that I'm like, was this some sort of political ploy? Because right now in the election, we're talking a lot about the increased child tax credit, right? So is this some sort
Yep.
of
I
political underlining?
I do think so
I felt
because
that.
the way that I found this was through I've told you guys I think the Daily Skim. I get that every morning and they tell you like the top 3 stories of the day before and then they have, the 5 posts underneath and when I read that headline and then I sent you guys the paragraph that they sent. So I'm going to read that really quickly just to kind of add context and Leah, it's 100% not conspiracy because when I read this you're going to say, "Oh, it's all politically driven." But what it says is so from the Skim, so they said, "What's going on? Parenting is hard. Bluey helps, but still." Now, America's doctor is acknowledging just how difficult things are by issuing the official Surgeon General's warning, saying that raising children can be hazardous to one's health. It's so challenging that nearly half of parents can barely function due to a combo of loneliness, money woes, and general stress, according to Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's new report. Approximately 66% of parents said they were consumed by worries regarding money, compared to 39% of other adults. Murthy believes these are measures our government and bosses could take that could lighten the load, highly necessary when you already have a little one strapped to your chest. For instance, expanding the child tax credit could give parents a break per dependent. There's also paid family and medical leave, sick time off, and making investments in healthcare, education, and institutions like libraries. These are policies that parents and advocacy groups have already been fighting for all along, but this acknowledgement is big. So I totally agree with you that it was very opportunistic of the time that we're in. But I remember Danielle's point when we brought this up was money is hard, but I I do think that we unfortunately live in a little bit of a bubble where we're not as savvy to some of the other not as fortunate people who literally cannot even afford to put food on the table. Or if they can, they're sacrificing some other bill, they're sacrificing some other something. And I do think a lot of people have kids that probably are not in the financial situation that they should be in to bring kids into this world. But who's to say, oh, hey, you are robbed of having a kid because you're in an unfortunate situation where you don't make enough money for that. And I do think that it's possible that some of that is me working at a homeless shelter, and I see these kids and it just like, it breaks my heart seeing these kids. And that's so unfair to say, like, some of those kids are happy as can be and super content in their lives, but some of them are really struggling and their parents are really struggling to even get them formula and get them stuff like that. So I can see that side of it. And I would be interested to know what percentage of parents fall at the poverty line or lower in the United States, because I think that would be probably where those statistics are hitting a little bit harder.
It'd also be, and I don't know if this is indicated in the article or not, Lisa, but interested to know if it shows the sample of the demographics that they polled,
Mm-mm.
because that could be a
Nope.
critical
Huge.
data
Huge.
point, and highly skew the results if we're only polling a certain class one way or the other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that would be
I
really
totally
interesting
agree with
because
that.
50%, and like you said, like we are very fortunate, and I recognize that. Like we have a lot in our lives, but 50%, man, that just seems like a huge statistic.
I think it'd be interesting too to know, like, you know, and we can hit this until the cows come home, but like, how many kids do they have, and what, you know, like I talked to my sister-in-law once, and she was talking about one of her son's friends who had, I think he has like 3 or 4 siblings, and they said he's the youngest and he's not allowed to play any of the sports he wants to play because they don't have the time to take him to his sports because the older kids get to play in their sports. And you're like, and they're pretty affluent family, like that makes me really sad to think like, oh, that poor kid, right? Like that's something that's going to stick with him, and there's going to be lots of therapy hopefully to get him
Yeah.
through that, you know. But like, yeah, it's very interesting, the decisions that people make. But like you said, you know, like unfortunately we have a biological clock that that you can't always come out of your financial woes in time to have those kids, to say, oh, I'm not going to have kids until I make XYZ money, because you may not get there, and you may be on track to get there, but you know, you're not looking to probably try and have a kid at 50, when I think 50 is the age that I read recently that they say is when people start to feel actually financially secure. It's like, oh man, that's a long time from now.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's also a wild statistic and very
Yeah.
Yeah.
discouraging.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
I mean, at the
Well,
end
with
of the
that
day,
article,
oh, go ahead,
oh,
Danielle.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I was just wondering if that article gave any suggestions on like what to do to how to f make your health
It's
not so
all
hazardous because
it's all legislation. It's all
yeah.
legislation. It's all getting
Oh,
help
money.
with
From the
money.
government.
Yeah, it's all
Okay.
getting tax credits. It's all getting, trying to find a way to get daycare and childcare cheaper so that you have more money to give them experiences. You know, it's like more paid time off, more sick leave, stuff like that. Because I will tell you, there have been days where I'm like, well, I just can't afford to miss work today, so I need to take them to school. And it's like, well, that's not right. You know, like I shouldn't be taking my kid to school when they're sick. Now I'm going to get all these other kids sick, but I have to get to work. You know, like I don't know that every country feels the same way we do about that. I also don't think that every person feels the same way we do. I also work a part-time job where I'm hourly, and you know, like I literally, and this is my choice, I'm not complaining, but every dollar I make goes to pay for their daycare. So I'm essentially wash. I'm a wash. I bring in exactly what I pay for their daycare. And that's a selfish thing of me wanting to work and be out in the normal world. But then it creates an issue of like, all right, we're going to be short on paying, you know, daycare. We'll have to take it away from going out to eat, or, you know, maybe don't let Hannah have 5 cases of blueberries this week. Maybe it's just 3, you know, like, so yeah, it's interesting. It'd be very interesting to hear different demographics on how they feel about that.
I in no way would describe my experience parenting as hazardous. I'm with you, Danielle. Like, Wes has brought so much joy to my life. I laugh so much more than I ever laughed before. Yeah, you know, from 4:30 to 5:30 over here, it sucks every Monday through Friday because he doesn't get good naps and he just screams his brains out, and it's stressful and frustrating. But I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. Like the last 19 months today,
No.
Oh,
have just been awesome. And like I never understood how that could actually be a thing. You always hear it from people who are parents and blah blah blah, right? But it really has been. It's been so much fun, and I'm sure there's definitely other ways that things are stressful. Like for sure. I mean, dropping him off at school is really stressful because he doesn't do good drop-offs and he just clings to me and gets really sad and stuff. And that makes me cry almost every day when I go to work. But I don't know. I guess I just can't let go of Hazardous. I feel like that's just so clickbaity and dramatic, and over the top.
I do think that there are a lot of studies out there about how important sleep is to your health and how not being able to sleep well can be a big thing. And I will say, going through, since February, Hannah having bad sleep and us not like having consistent, like long nights of sleep has been really stressful and really like Brandon and I have our annual blood draw for like our health panel for our insurance in a couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm nervous about this because like when I'm tired I eat more and I eat bad food, very bad food, like lots of sugar, lots of salt, lots of all of that kind of stuff. So I can see what they're saying, but I also see where that's extremely dramatic for them to phrase it in that way. So yes, I see it both ways, right? Like they bring me so much joy, right? Like and like we've talked about on the podcast before, like being pregnant with Hannah and not knowing what was coming to me, I was terrified. I was so terrified and I was such a wreck and I cried so much and I was so scared and was like, what did I do with my life? Like it's all over now because I have a kid. So I do see where people are like, this is too scary to have a kid. But yeah, just to circle back, it's been incredible. Nobody could have described, like they tell you it's going to be this cool and this great, but you don't believe it until you have it. And they are amazing, but Hannah does test our patience for sure. And I just started listening to a new parenting podcast that I really like, especially because their accents are Australian and I just love that accent so much. But they were talking about like they took some listener questions or something and he's like, I mean, I'm going to be honest, you are so in the throes right now from 1.5 until 5.5 years old is the hardest time of your life.
That's such a long period of time.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, like I still have 3 years to go with just Hannah and I haven't even started with Aubrey. No.
Okay.
But
what's more discouraging, that or being financially stable not until you're 50?
Yeah.
Which one?
I would take, oh man, it's hard. It's hard. Like there are days where it's like, and I'm listening to this podcast and this guy is a pediatric therapist, I think is what his title is. I don't remember specifically, but basically that's what he does. And he counsels mostly troubled kids who like have bad upbringings and stuff like that. But he's like, all right, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And I'm like, I do all of those things and I'm going to traumatize her. This is so bad. I hate this so much. It's like, and it's so hard in the moment, but like you just do the best you can. And like that's what I keep telling Brandon. This is temporary. We just have to get through the hard stages. Like, well, when does that end? And I literally almost sent him the podcast, like just the blip where it says 1.5 to 5.5, but I was afraid he would die if I told him that because he doesn't function well without sleep. So I absolutely would tell you he would tell you that I don't know if he would use the word hazardous, but not good for your health. Like he I mean, you can ask him, like he's gained a ton of weight since we've had the girls. Like I've gained a ton of weight since we've had the girls. It's just like, you just get by, you find a way to get by and anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry.
No, not at all.
That made me think of a poem. I want to read it on the podcast, but maybe not now, but it was just about kind of exactly what you were saying. It was like a It Can Wait poem. I don't know if I can find it, but it was, yeah. We'll say something while I look for it real quick.
Yeah. It's so tough because it's like, it's not helpful to hear people say, oh, it's, you're in the hardest time right now. Like it's not what you want to hear. Like, I get it. I get it. And you also don't want to hear, oh, you're going to wish for these days back. That's not helpful in the moment either.
No, neither of those things contribute positively, influence anything in a good way. But it's where people come from a good place for the most part. Intentions are mostly
Yeah.
good, but it's like, okay, yeah, that's not helpful. That's not helping me
Well, I
get
think
extra sleep tonight.
we've started following some of the satirical or like, you know, falling on their own sword moms on Instagram, and it's really entertaining for them to be like, you know, telling all of the rough stuff that they go through and trying to make it funny, because it is funny if you really let yourself separate yourself from the situation of how hard it is. But in the moment, you're like, this isn't funny. I'm not enjoying this, you know.
Okay,
So.
do you want me to read it?
Yeah, read it.
Okay, this is from Jessica Ehrlich, and this is from her website. She has a book, I think it's Beautiful Chaos, and she has parent poems in there. It's a little British, or she is British, I think, so it sounds a little British. Okay, so it says, Dear husband, there's a life in the future with little faces in photo frames instead of before our eyes. So that's a little British for me. But artwork and ABC magnets won't adorn our fridge, and these old leggings I'm wearing right now will be long gone. There's a bed big enough where little elbows and knees won't prod us in our sleep, and only our feet will swing out in the morning. There's a vase placed in reach of little arms because there aren't any, and mugs will daringly sit on the edge of the table. There's a bank balance that looks a bit more forgiving. A bag I leave with that isn't overflowing, and it'll only take us 10 seconds from the door to the car. There's a free calendar that isn't packed with swimming lessons, dance classes, muddy sports shoes, and we'll get to know each other for a third time before them. I'm going to cry because this makes me sad. So before them, with them, and then when only 2 jackets hang on our door. There's a clean car. The only noise is the hum of the radio. There will be no endless questions and high-pitched voices from the back seat. There may even be days we don't hear from them at all. There's date nights with no curfew. My mom's not needed for babysitting. And it says mums, by the way. Mums. Not needed for babysitting. And we aren't sleeping with one eye open, waiting for the shuffle of feet down the hall. A type of freedom that feels heavy. There's a house that's clean. Maybe our couch is new. And we aren't stepping on Legos and toy cars either. In fact, there's not much color anywhere. Remember how we hated the color? Remember how it came with so much happiness? There's dinner tables that feel big, and we aren't negotiating bites of vegetables or wiping little hands and mouths. But sometimes there's a knock on our door, and our table is full once more. There's a shower that doesn't sound like baby cries, a coffee that's warm, and my body will be my own. We won't wear tired the same the same way, but time will have aged us anyways. Sorry. There will be hard moments to come that will make these moments look easy, but we'll remember. We'll remember the first words, the curls, the I love yous, the moments we almost broke, and how we held each other through it. We'll laugh and we'll cry, just like we did then. There's a life in the future, and it's coming for us every day. So let's get swept up by the beautiful chaos in front of us. Let's make the future wait a little longer, because I love this life with you so much. This one right now. So that's by Jessica Ehrlich. And so
that's heavy.
Jeez.
Sorry.
I wasn't
When you
gonna
were talking
open my
like
wine
that?
tonight, but now I have to.
I was like, good thing I wasn't drinking. I'd really be crying.
Man.
I read that and I was like, oh, this will be perfect. I wanted to read that to you guys, but I'll send it to you.
Perfect.
We can link it. But yeah, it's just like, man, we're in the thick of it, but it's exactly where I want to be, because that future seems a little lonely to me, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to talk about
we
loneliness,
can all live
right? Like that.
I was going to say, we all need to just support each other and be together close. So we can be there live on our
I
compound.
was
We
just
always
gonna
talk
say
about getting.
we
Oh,
still
I
let's
live
gotta.
on
do
the
it.
compound, so there's always somebody around. Because man, that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
Sounds really hard.
It's
Yeah.
Well, speaking of close, I'm coming in 2 weeks to Phoenix to
Woohoo!
start looking at neighborhoods. So
Yay!
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, my father-in-law asks us frequently, like, do you remember what life was like before Wes was around? And it's like, I don't know. What did we do? Like, were we just like couch potatoes? Did we just watch a lot of TV?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
what did we do with all of our time? My goodness. And I'm like, no, I guess I don't, because I don't remember what we did. I just feel like at this point we probably didn't do anything that we should have done. And I don't want to think of that future.
We've got a lot of time, and I will tell you, I've never and I said this before, I've never in my life lived as in the present as I do right now, and I love that so much. I love, like, it's such an interesting thing, like, I'm living, like, because I worked in an industry where the weekends were harder than the weekdays, but like I've never lived like wanting the weekends to come to spend this time with my family. And to be fair, I also get really excited for Sunday night, because Monday I get to take my kids back to school because it's really hard, Danielle. It's really hard what you do. And it's just like, it's really, it's amazing. It's hard. And I do understand what the Surgeon General is saying. And I do hope that that was in the best interest to try to get help, because like I know I listened to a podcast about New Mexico doing an amazing job of paying for daycare for, like, I think it's like $10 a day for them or something like that. Like, Leah, can you imagine paying $300 a month? Like, that's incredible. Or $10 a month, like in Canada, like that's incredible. I can't imagine that. Like, I wonder what their health is like in comparison to our health, for sure. So anyway, that's my feelings.
I think in summary, I think we can understand where the article's coming from, while recognizing that might be a little bit of a stretch, but that there are those potential health factors. The lack of sleep, that's very real. The stress of just everyday life, of figuring out if you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, or if you're going to work and put your kids in school and trying to figure out school. And I know Lisa and I have talked about, where are our kids going to go to elementary school? For goodness sake, Wes is 18 months old, but that's something that we legitimately have to talk about at this age, because of where we live and because of the school system and the wait lists and stuff like that. And so I think I understand like where it's coming from. Was my woo-woo conspiracy side a little bit correct? Yes, slightly politically motivated in that article, but at the end of the day, I think we all agree that the pros outweigh the cons. And we wouldn't do our lives without our little ones. We would like to ask for you to go and comment on our posts and share your experience with parenting, what you thought of the article. You can either send us a DM, an email, you can comment on our post or respond to one of our stories, but we definitely want to hear from you, our listeners, in what we talked about tonight. We look forward to hearing from you a little bit more in the future.
And that wraps up another episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Thank you again so much for listening to us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving us 5 stars so other mothers out there like you can find us and listen. If you would like, you could follow us on any of our socials at Mom Jeans the podcast. If you have questions, would like to send us your birth story, or give us suggestions or things that you would like to hear, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. See you next week.